Farhan?
Like Farhan is actually...
I'm still cooking.
Masak naon kan?
I hope you guys don't mind.
This is so funny.
What are you cooking? Have you prepared enough for all of us?
Yeah,
Please.
like some pieces of it.
That's not enough for all of us.
Well, this is a virtual meeting, so I'm
the
preparing
steak.
a virtual
Oh my God.
steak, right?
Guys, there is a category in the pornography world about men being dominated by their wives, and this is an example.
Huh? I don't know what you're talking about.
When you grow up, Ima, maybe you'll know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I still have to grow up.
Yeah, don't grow up, Ima. It's not nice.
Yeah, I know. I'm having fun on my own.
Okay, I'm going to start anytime you guys say so. And
Yes, please. Please.
All right.
Go for it.
It's 207. Okay, guys, thank you again for everybody to come to this session. And I would like to ask your participation to mute if you are not speaking. And if you can, I've enabled all of you to change your names. So please change your names if you'd like, including I'm going to change my own name so people can keep in touch. So I'm going to change my name to my IG name or whatever you want. So we can all keep in touch. Change it later. Okay, I'll start this. Who just joined? Monica. Okay, so again, a lot of you probably know who Farhan is, but I'll read you his official profile. Okay, I'll read you Alfred's profile. Alfred was former director with the United States Agency for International Development, known as USAID. He was in missions in Bolivia, Guatemala, Philippines, Indonesia, and the Regional Asia Mission in Bangkok and in Washington, D.C. He was also the former director of USAID's Regional Environment Office, overseeing foreign assistance and environmental activities in 24 countries.
Wow.
So he's a big dude. And he most recently served as a USAID development diplomat in residence based in California State, Long Beach. Alfred has a Bachelor's of Science in Civil Engineering from Stanford and a Master of Arts in Economics and Master in Urban and Regional Planning from USC. The background of why we're doing this. Farhan and I has known Alfred from Ideas, so we've known each other for almost 10 years now. We remain good friends despite our 3 different locations. Alfred, Farhan, and myself share one thing in common, which is we like Jakarta at night. And that remains the common thing that we like. And I'm sure that you guys also like Jakarta at night.
Environment at night, it is.
Yes. So, first of all, Ima, don't give me that look. I can see you on the camera. So, Farhan, maybe you'd like to say a few things about why we do this and about Alfred as well.
Well, allow me to say hello to everyone. Thank you for Alfred, who's willing to wake up 11 p.m. LA time just to meet us. That's how much he misses us. So the other thing is that hopefully that we can keep this conversation the very tight, interesting one. I think 90 minutes, according to our experience, is the best time, even though we can extend to 2 hours. And the other thing is that I met Alfred in Cambridge the first time when we hook up into a very interesting conversation about how interested he was in, and still is, I think, about the soccer landscape in Indonesia, which I've been working for at that time, I think around 3 or 4 years into the field. And since then, we had a lot of conversation with Alfred. And one of the most personal thing that I really had with him is that when he dedicated his speech to my late son on the program of USAID saving the rhinos, because he knew how much my late son loved rhinos. And it shows that Alfred is a very emotional guy in a way. But then he worked in a lot of fields, especially in developing countries. Maybe his work requires him to do so, but then again, his patience is just high. And his experience in Central and South America brings him to a point where he, not everyone knows, is the man behind Transjakarta and busway. No shit, huh? And I said to Alfred, you know what? That's the only thing I approve about Pak Sutioso. and I really hope that Alfred will share us about the true story of how to bring the busway from Bogota to Jakarta. Okay. So now let's give it to Alfred and Omar, who's prepared something really interesting for us. Enjoy.
Thanks for the intro, Farhan. I'm going to share a screen.
Yeah.
If I remember how to share a screen. Okay, just a second. Do you guys see the screen?
Tech support.
Do you guys see the screen? No, not yet. Okay. Hang on a second. Oops, I have failed to share the screen.
There you go.
You guys see the screen?
Yeah.
Okay. You guys see the whole thing? Hang on.
Yeah, sure. You just have to pinch it out.
Okay.
Share again. That was Alfred
okay.
in
Is it
education work.
Alfred, are you there?
Still here.
Okay, Alfred, maybe you explain what you're doing here in 1984. A lot of you are not born yet, but Alfred was.
I can't see the screen.
Well,
You can't see the screen? Sorry.
Can't see the screen.
No, cannot.
Okay, sorry.
You had it before, and then it went away.
Now?
And
Not yet.
Ima, you work in a tech company and live in Singapore. Get this guy a short course about technology.
I'm always tech support. In every situation, I seem to be tech
What
support.
about now?
Yeah,
Now, yes,
don't
okay,
touch anything.
good.
Don't touch anything. Good now.
Yes, Ima. Okay.
I'll teach you over dinner tonight.
All right, Alfred, go ahead, please.
Okay, so this was 1984. This is my first job overseas. I had received a Fulbright research and teaching grant in Peru, and the whole purpose was to help the government of Peru improve their irrigation network. So I'm actually hiking the central valleys of what's called the Montado Valley in the highlands of Peru, checking out irrigation trajectories and the possibility of delivering water, both potable water and irrigated water to villages in the highlands. So that was part of what I did, 1984 through 1985.
Wow. Is that really you, Alfred? Doesn't look like you.
Yeah, that's probably a lot darker me. I was in the sun a whole lot at that time.
All right. Let me also give a bit of a warning to everyone here that what you will see will resemble a portfolio, a modeling career portfolio. So this may impress you. And that's Alfred in Peru, and he has assured us he is not running drugs in that mountain there. All right, next picture, Alfred.
Okay, so after Peru, with my experience in engineering and irrigation, I moved over to Bolivia, and there I am with a whole bunch of D6s. There's something called the El Nino phenomenon, and what that does to countries in Central and South America is either create landslides because too much flooding, or creates droughts. And so we had a huge $600 million program to rebuild the roads and the irrigation networks of Bolivia, and that was the project that I was managing at the time.
Okay. 1986.
That's in Bolivia, working with communities, which was always my favorite thing. You know, later on in my career, I put on a tie more than anything else. But at the beginning, I absolutely loved to get out there and mix it up with the people. And that's in the highlands of Bolivia. You can see these women with bowler hats and these big broad skirts. They're called cholas. And we did a lot of potable water, some environmental work, irrigation, food security, working with, you know, these obviously fairly poor people, trying to help them out a little bit.
You speak Spanish, right, Alfred?
Yeah, my mom's Mexican,
Okay.
so that was a native thing for me.
Okay. Next picture. Guatemala.
Guatemala, yeah, I was after Bolivia, I was sent to Guatemala for 5 years, 1988 to 93, and worked with a lot of communities. This is an interesting photo because there, at the time, Guatemala was going through a civil war, and all the men of those highland communities, it's an area called the Ixil Triangle, all the men were killed. So there was nothing but widows there. And that's why you don't see any men in the picture. So I used to go up there on my free time and actually either buy all their weavings and resell them and take the money back to the widows, or invite the widows down to the capital, to Guatemala City, where the ambassador, who was a really cool guy, agreed to let these widows sell anything and everything they had in terms of their beautiful weaving. So, you know, that was more kind of it was community work, but it was more kind of on my own personal time, even though I worked in sustainable agriculture in that area at the time.
So how many children did you have there?
None
Well,
that
you
I
should
know
be the
of.
alpha male. You're the only male there, man.
Hold
Come on.
on.
All right, Farhan's breaking into the funny stuff already.
No, but actually, why were the men killed? I'm trying to be serious here, Farhan.
Okay, I'm sorry.
The
There's a
men were
war
killed
going
because
on.
it was a bad time in the history of Guatemala.
Civil war?
Yeah, it was a civil war, and the
Wow.
government had a scorched earth policy, and they basically just wiped out all the men. And it was a really nasty time. There was a lot of impunity, and the military got away with everything. And yeah, it's a horrible, horrible period in the history of that poor little country.
I didn't know that at all. Thanks for sharing that.
Like me, you believe in democracy, Alfred. How did you survive that situation while you know there's nothing that you can do to change the corrupted system?
You know, Farhan, you do what you can. You know, I absolutely loved that little country. And as a matter of fact, I was taken hostage by guerrillas on one of my official visits to an area called the Peten. And so, you know, I personally suffered directly from the lawlessness over there. But you don't care, because you just say, listen, I'm just going to do whatever I can, even if it's one little grain of sand. When you're when you really are committed to something, you don't think so much. You just give everything you can, and that's what I felt at the time. I don't care. I'm going to give everything I got.
You got abducted, kidnapped, and then taken hostage. How did you survive?
These were Marxist guerrillas, and what they thought that I went with some people from NASA, and we had some high-tech equipment like GPSs at the time. They were a lot bigger at that time. And they actually thought that we were trying to find their hideaways, the guerrilla hideouts. And they thought that we were going to report them to the military police so that the military police can come and kill them. So we were held captive for about 13 hours. And during that time, two things are going on. They were trying to convince us that their cause was just. And we're trying to convince them that we did not work with the military, and we weren't trying to give their geospatial locations to the military so that they can find them and kill them. So we were successful in convincing them of that. In fact, what we were looking for were new archaeological sites in the northern jungle so that we could promote some ecotourism up there. But they were not so successful in convincing us that their cause was just.
Understood. Wow, didn't realize you went through that. And by the way, looking at that picture, I'm quite impressed you didn't choose another career in the entertainment business.
Well, if there would have been another career, it would have been a weaver in that village, because I absolutely loved the stuff that they did.
All right. Next picture. Oh, wow, look at this. Girls, if you want to download this photo, this is the right time.
Well, as I just mentioned, I was working with NASA to find new archaeological sites, and we found them through all kinds of advanced technology. A lot of these ruins were under trees and under mounds, and we picked them out through some satellite photography and aerial photography using some algorithms. And so we, with the permission of the government, actually excavated into one of the tombs. And there was a National Geographic guy with us. And we were the first people in this tomb since probably the year 850 AD.
Wow.
Anyway, so the whole purpose of doing that was to create the basis for sustainable tourism in that part of the country, which was based on archaeological sites. Maybe you've heard of Tikal. Tikal is in that very same area. It was based on archaeological sites as well as an intact subtropical forest. So that was the purpose of my 5-year stay there, to find new archaeological sites and to put the systems in place so that the narco traffickers and the guerrillas, not the animal guerrillas, but the wartime guerrillas would not destroy the forest cover of that area.
Alfred, I just wonder how it feels to enter a room that has been vacuumed for a millennial. How did it feel?
Yeah,
How did it smell?
It smelled horrible, actually, and somebody said there might be some
It's
bacteria.
not like Indiana Jones kind of thing at all.
Well, luckily I didn't suffer the fate of all those bad guys in the Indiana Jones movies. I'm not too superstitious, so I didn't feel like some spirit was going to kill me. But it smelled horrible. But geez, what an incredible honor, and a little creepy. Yeah, a little creepy.
Hi. Could somebody please mute? Okay. Alfred, you there?
Yes, still here.
Okay. Now this is you showing this guy your phone. What's up with that?
Well, that's actually the GPS. That's yeah. So I've had such a privilege of being working in a whole bunch of different places. That's in PNG, and I'm working with some community leaders and an NGO again, in forestry management in PNG. As you know, it's the flip side to Papua, right? It is an unbelievably intact country in terms of its wild ecosystems. And there, as most everywhere else on the planet, there's a whole bunch of pressure to tear the forest down, to put up the mines, to catch all the fish. And Papua New Guinea is an extraordinary place. We actually had some programs to help community-based forestries repel the capital investments of very big companies that just want to rip the country to pieces.
Next picture.
So yeah, I also work I apart from environmental stuff, I was working in conflict and disasters. There was an earthquake in Kashmir in 2007, and at that time I was actually based in DC. And so they sent me for 100 days up to Muzaffarabad in the Northwest provinces. And from there we went to Kashmir all the time to help the Pakistanis deal with that earthquake. So that's me dealing with local community leaders on reconstruction.
I can see behind a demolished structure. So that was right after the Kashmir earthquake, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, next one. South Sudan.
Get back to Kashmir, because it's very interesting. It's a never-ending conflict area.
Yeah.
How did it look there? How was it? How was things going on there?
India and Pakistan have been fighting about this for a few decades now. Now China's a new player into all this stuff, if you've been reading the news. How did it look? Kashmir is incredibly beautiful. Kashmir is just, it's so beautiful. Of course, I wasn't there to admire the beauty. There was all these villages, especially up in the highland areas in the hills. They're built with stone and mortar, and so all the houses just crumbled. Very little structural steel or very little supporting these houses apart from just simple mortar. And so the conflict, it took a back seat because everybody got hurt. The Indians and the Pakis just put their differences aside for a second, and we worked well with both sides for that interim.
Okay.
So that's, I went to South Sudan 3 times. I actually covered a lot of countries in Africa when I was working in the conflict part of the U.S. government. And at that time, South Sudan was trying to create its own country. So I was working with what were called rebel leaders at the time, who were trying to secede from northern Sudan. And so my job was to try to create some ways to reduce the conflict between the North and the South so that they could actually have a negotiated settlement over particularly the oil resources that exist in the South. All the money was with the oil, and that was in the South, and the North wanted it. So they used to send their helicopter gunships and bomb the people in the South. And it was just a bloody mess. So I went to South Sudan 3 times to work on that, did a conflict assessment, and worked with the rebel leaders to try to help reach some negotiated settlement with the North.
Is South Sudan and North Sudan separated now, or is it still one country?
South Sudan created a new country. Now, I've lost touch with the details, but as I understand it, it has gone back to warfare. They also had the problem in the West with the Janjaweed, which was actually a separate conflict. And in the South itself, there was tribal conflict between the Dinkas, the Nuers, and the Boers. So that poor country had North-South interstitial tribal warfare and problems with the Janjaweed, who are from the outside. I think the whole place just went back to warfare. I think that's the latest situation now. I've lost touch with it.
Alfred, I need your point of view a little bit about Africa. It's very interesting because right after the World War II, there's this Africa Asian movement where new independence countries are arising.
Yep.
50 years later, Asia was successful. We have Japanese, we have Singapore, India, Indonesia, China, everybody, Korea, and everyone can bring up themselves into a very powerful Asia.
Yeah.
What happened with Africa? Because they have South Africa, they have Namibia, that also, and Algeria, who is very rich with their natural resources, but yet they can manage that into a very strong national wealth. Dangote is one of the strongest company group in Africa right now, and it's a global player. What happened? Why are they not competing with Asia right now?
So Farhan, you put your finger on the most perplexing and emotional question that I think one could have if you work in Africa. I worked in 13 African countries. I spent quite a bit of time, particularly in Sudan, Congo, and Liberia. I had spent some time in Kenya and South Africa to see the upper end of the African countries. But that question slaps you in the face every single time you look at what's going on over there, particularly if you compare it to a place that decolonialized after World War II, like Indonesia. So I'm no Africanist. I asked my Africanist friends and read a ton of books. For me, the most useful book to help explain the answer to that extremely good question is by somebody named Jared Diamond. The book is called Guns, Germs, and Steel. And, a lot of people will give you a political perspective. Some people will give you an economic perspective. Some people will give you a biological perspective. This book combines all of them and puts together what I thought were the best integrated reasons why Africa is so far behind. If I can take a shot at summarizing it, Africa had it started off in an unfortunate place, first of all, because whereas Europe and most of the rest of the world had domesticatable animals, which included the cow and the chicken and the horse, we've used these animals for our food or plowing our fields or riding them around for transportation. Africa has never had any domesticatable animals. You try riding a zebra, it's not possible. And they have lions and things that kill you on top of that. There's no domesticatable animals, so they didn't have that technological advantage at the time that Europe and Asia and the Americas did. They had very little agricultural products as well. Most of the agricultural products that we are familiar with, that we eat, were originated in other parts of the world. So they had a tough start to begin with. But then you get into the more modern reasons why Africa did not catch up. And, I could talk for about half an hour on this. Hopefully some of that would be illuminating, but I don't know if you want to get into this. It's a great question. It's a perplexing question. It hangs over your head every time you think about Africa, but it's a complicated answer.
Can I just say something on that, just a little bit on that as well? I think it's also an idea of perception. I think there's also the information war on that as well. I think to Farhan's question, I think we have this perception. And again, when you think about Africa, for all of those of us who grew up in the 80s, our perception of Africa is famine, malnutrition, poverty. When you actually take a closer look at Africa, and to your point, Farhan, actually there are like wealth and resources and all of that. They're not managed well. But again, when you constantly see a continent that is filled with poverty and famine, I'm not the banker, I'm not the investor in this group, but you don't want to go there. There's no attraction. And so I think that's also part of it as well. We always see that. That's why it's like when you actually look at African countries now, if you look at Kenya, and you know, I've seen the first time I saw a photo of Ethiopia that was not of famine, my jaws just dropped. Like this was when, you know, first year undergraduate, when my classmate was an Ethiopian. It was lush and fertile and all of that, but that's not what we see in the media. So it is partly information and perception war as well, and I think that's changing a lot.
Well said.
But
Hey.
isn't it, hi Al, it's Kath here.
Hi, Kath.
Hi, good to see you, Lou.
Likewise.
Yeah, I miss you in Davos this year.
Yeah, I hope you had a good time, and I'm sure it was interesting.
It was warm. Anyway, the gap in Africa seems to be much wider than Asia, yeah? I mean, it has been and it still is, and it's never improved, even though what Ima said that, you know, in terms of economy looks lush, but the gap, it's not sort of narrowing at all.
Yeah. I think the starting point as well, you know, if you know, where the race is starting, it's like where we were and where they are, that also has a factor in it as well. And I mean, again, like Al, I could do half an hour on this as well as we talk about that. And again, it's this idea of, in the past couple of weeks, we've been talking about it here in my company and then everywhere, is this idea of anti-Blackness. It is part of that perception. It also persists in how we then provide funds. It's always continued to be a continent that receives aid. It will always be perceived as that. Therefore, they're not then pushed into independence to then move forward and you know, have this giant step to develop. Again, it's another long conversation. Happy to take it up another time.
Ima, we will provide half an hour for you. Me and Farhan will provide half an hour for you to discuss it on another one. Okay.
We will. I love Africa.
I'd love
anyway.
to.
Let's move on with Aceh. Oh my God, you in Aceh.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was
Wow.
vacationing in Mexico, and again, I at the time I was actually based in DC, and then I got a phone call that said, "Be in Washington within 48 hours. There's going to be a plane to go to northern Indonesia, and you have to be on it." I said, "Okay," so I made my way to Washington, and then on to Jakarta, and then got in a C-130, and which is a huge military aircraft that the U.S. government had, and we went up to Aceh, and I spent I think 2 months there, and literally 4 or 5 days after the tsunami struck, for what was one of the honors and the privileges of my whole career. It was extremely emotional. I mean, you see hundreds and hundreds of dead bodies everywhere. They're just everywhere. And the Indonesian military picking them up. And, you know, my role in that whole team was to try to restart the economy. So I had 2 months, and I think something like, I don't know, my guess was $20 million to do whatever I could to help restart the economy. Did it with a number of NGOs, including the Palang Merah, which I think is one of the next photos, as well as some international NGOs. And we started doing, our very first thing was cash for work to deal with the rubble, because there was rubble everywhere. And then some ingenious communities started using rubble to construct pallets. And you know, we built up from there. And so it was a really emotional time, but you know, you have to deal with these things in a very clinical sense, and you can't let the emotion get to you. But I worked 18-hour days for 2 months. I literally sunk my heart into that job, and it was a privilege and an honor. And at night I cried and slept, and in the day I just put myself into fifth gear the whole day.
Aceh is one of the worst tsunami everyone ever seen in the modern life.
Absolutely.
So looking at that, living there for the first 2 months of the catastrophe, how did you feel?
You know, Farhan, I was the only guy on the team who could speak Indonesian. And, you know, you guys know I speak perhaps not great, but, you know, sufficient Indonesian to have, you know, pretty in-depth conversation with villagers. So I was the translator for the big shots, and I did a lot of community-based work, obviously, for the Cash for Work program. How did I feel? Inside, I was torn to pieces. I mean, when you talk with somebody who says, I was holding my child and the wave took my child away and I never saw my child again, or somebody who says, you know, we put grandma on the mattress and we're holding on to the mattress, but then the mattress slipped out of our hands and then we never saw our grandma again. And, you know, I heard story after story after story after story, like, and it rips you to pieces. It tore me apart. But, you know, my job was not to do anything other than be as effective and efficient as I could in my task and duty. So, you know, stuff that emotion in a box and maybe let it out later, maybe not. But I was internally torn to shreds, but, you know, again, trying to be as clinical as I possibly could about that.
I couldn't put myself in your shoes at that time. How do you unbox those emotions? How do you manage it now?
I don't think I've ever had a 2 months that was as emotionally draining as that. When every single day you're dealing with 15, 20 stories of people who've lost everybody in their family. I happily, I don't have to deal with that kind of thing anymore. You know, at the time, I think the way that I could deal with it is once I let it out, right? And then I realized I was totally ineffective in what I was trying to do. So it's like a doctor, you know, if somebody comes to a doctor and they have their arm chopped off, and if he gets all emotional about it, and oh my God, how did that happen? There's blood all over the place. He's not going to be an effective doctor. You just have to put that stuff aside and be a professional about what you have to do. Not easy, but there is no alternative in a case like that.
Okay, thank you so much. Let's move on. Do you still have any more pictures, Omar? Omar? I think Omar just cut off.
I'm here. I'm here. Don't leave me, guys. Sorry, I was just sharing that thing. Right. Okay. Next picture. Now, Coral Triangle
Initiative.
Yeah.
Tell us more about this. This is interesting.
Yeah, you know, okay, so if you guys have heard of the Coral Triangle Initiative, a whole bunch of biologists got together and did studies all over the world and in an effort to figure out where the highest density of marine life is on the planet. And the answer to that riddle is the Coral Triangle. There are a number of countries that consist of the Coral Triangle. Indonesia is right smack in the middle of it. Well, Philippines says that they are, but it's actually Indonesia. It also includes Malaysia, you know, the Sarawak, Borneo side, but also includes the Solomon Islands, Papua New Guinea, and I think there are a total of 6 or 7 countries. It's that area. So a regional institution was created to manage marine life in this highest density area on the planet for life underwater. And that's the first Secretary General of the Coral Triangle Initiative. He was the Secretary General of KKP, the Kementerian Kelautan dan Perikanan. So I had worked with him closely before, and the US government had a pretty big role in launching that initiative, and I was the person who was responsible for that. So we launched that. Don't ask me if it's been effective. We're still working on that part. But the intention was to save life underwater, and Indonesia is basically ground zero for that.
What a great initiative, Alfred. Okay, I'm gonna hop through some pictures, and in the interest of time, we'll go through some of them. Now, we know this guy, the one in a mustache. And maybe you want to say a bit about this, Alfred?
I do.
Professor Jatta.
That's Yatna. And guys, I'm going unscripted here.
Prof. Jatta looks like Pitung, man.
You're bad, Farhan.
I know, like, imagine you meet him in the middle of a jungle, bringing
or in the dark.
A big machete, big golok with that mustache. You wouldn't think he's a professor, man. You would think he's some kind of begal.
So I'm glad Yatna's not in the crowd here.
Kang Farhan, you say that simply because he's far from the Wi-Fi. He's in the garden,
Oh, is that?
I'm safe. I'm safe.
All right, I'm going off script here, guys. I'm gonna say a couple things that are probably not expected or maybe even welcome. So, I'm a nobody, really. I mean, I'm talking, but I'm a nobody, right? The real heroes of the environment in Indonesia, it's that guy, Yatna, and Yanni from WCS, who I worked with for years and years, just like Pat Yatna. I worked with them from 93 to 96, and then again from 2007 to 2012. And I don't know if Meiti, who's also an IDEA's graduate, He's
on the call. She's on the call.
Meiti, say something. Meiti is a hero. Meiti has dedicated her life to marine issues in Indonesia.
Alfred.
Hi, Meiti, you lovely woman. Meiti should talk about the marine issues in Indonesia way more than me, because she actually knows a lot about that stuff. So I want to give reference to Yanni, Yatna, and Meiti, and there may be others, but these are three people who I've worked very closely with. These are the environmental heroes for Indonesia. Say something, Meiti.
I'm happy to hear you here, and our journey together when you were here, we were going to Papua, spend some time underwater and help the community to work with the small local NGOs who's very passionate doing the community development, the coastal community empowerment, and how they, manage their area. They're proud of their area and trying to continue their tradition for managing the area. It's very nice, and proud of work doing it with you.
So guys, if you don't know Meiti, she is probably one of the top 1 or 2 experts in Raja Ampat, and probably on pretty much everything east of Bali in the ocean. So Meiti, take a bow. You're lovely, and you're awesome.
Hi, Meiti. You are glad to have you on the call. Glad to have you on the call. Thanks for joining.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's so good to have a mermaid in our group. You were.
Yeah, she's pretty also.
Thanks.
So Farhan, this is a plush toy convention, or you have teddy bears with you, and these 3 men with teddy bears. Can you explain to us a bit about the teddy bear convention here?
Oh, are you asking me or Farhan?
Is that teddy bear or orang utan?
I don't know what they're holding. They're holding dolls. They look so cute.
It's orangutans. Farhan, go ahead.
Because the most popular politician with a teddy bear is Pak Abu Rizal Bakri when the video of they're going to Maldives came out. So anyway, what is this all about? That's Mr. Vice President.
Yeah, so you guys caught me by surprise when you wanted photos, so I just started shooting stuff out there. I thought this was kind of funny, actually. So that we're all holding orangutans. The guy on the right is one of the premier orangutan experts in the country, and this was a
Saragi, is it? No,
I actually forgot his name, but he works in Kalimantan. He's a super good guy. And this was a conference on endangered species, focusing on orangutans. And So I spoke for the U.S. government, and Kala spoke for the Indonesian government, and he bashed the United States, which was really kind of funny. Anyway, it was a very interesting conference. That's all I have to say about that.
Flash toys. Oh, this is Alfred's favorite photo. So you need to explain this.
Okay, so Métis was just talking about community-based work to promote sustainable fisheries and marine conservation, and this is an award ceremony for women who are heroes and leaders at the community level across the Coral Triangle. So I had the great honor to present awards to these women. I think that woman herself, a superhero, was from Papua New Guinea and led her very large community to do sustainable fishing in this very important area of that country. There were women from Indonesia and women from Solomon Islands and all over the Coral Triangle. So I love that, just because I'm all over the gender issue, not only in terms of education, but putting them at a paramount place in society, because they're the ones who teach our kids, and they're the ones who have a great influence over the future of the planet and the way we humans deal with each other. Women absolutely need a much greater place in international development. And I like this photo because we're, putting our little grain of sand to help make that a reality.
When was this photo taken, Alfred? Was this recent?
No, it was, I would say this was probably about 5-6 years ago. It was part of the Coral Triangle Initiative.
So in this photo shoot, we've seen you in 1984, and this is 2016. And
that's right.
Your skin is just radiant, Alfred. What skincare do you use?
It's all makeup, man.
Seriously, Omar?
No, look at him.
That's actually the strongest question that we prepared since last night. Please answer the question.
Yeah, what is it? It's not surgery. I know you're not into that, but it's just skincare. It's just like, look at that. I don't look. You guys seen him inside a cave in Bolivia in 1984 and Guatemala. I mean, and look at him. It's like nothing has changed.
Exactly. I gotta say, I was expecting harder questions than that, Omar.
Oh, it's gonna come, Alfred.
Okay.
Come on. I know it's very hard for you to come out, but please, we are very open.
That is sincere questions.
Your
hi,
age defies you.
Hi, Alfred. How are you?
Okay, let's move on.
All right, we're gonna move on.
I'm waiting for the big story.
We're gonna move on to the big story. The big story, and this story is gonna blow everybody away. All right, here it is.
Oh my God!
So
it came from Bogota.
I've been.
Let me introduce you to this. Back in 2004, everybody say Frank Sinatra is doing My Way, while Sutioso is doing Busway. We got that all wrong, because this guy is the Busway guy. Go ahead, Alfred, take it away.
Well, that's kind of you. I wouldn't go that far, but I'll tell you the truth as I know it. So I was at the time head of something called the Clean Air Team, which is something, it was a group of people in USAID that we were given a big chunk of cash at that time to do environmental work and to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and reduce air pollution. So I was the head of the team, and so we put out a call for proposals, and there was an organization called the Institute for Transportation Development and Policy, ITDP. They worked very closely in Curitiba in the establishment of their busway, and worked with the mayor of Bogota City. His name was Enrique Peñalosa, in the creation of Transmilenio, these are two fabulous rapid transit bus systems. So at the time, they were thinking about doing something in Asia, and so they went to New Delhi and they approached Jakarta, and at the time they submitted to us a proposal to for the possibility of developing a transmillennial in Jakarta. So negotiations with Sutioso so we gave him the grant, and negotiations were kind of yes and no, yes and no, yes and no. So finally, it was proposed that we go and see Bogota's busway. So Sutioso agreed to that. And so I went on behalf of the US government and the Clean Air team. And Sutioso took a whole huge crowd of people. I went with two people. One was Indonesian and one was from this group called ITDP. And so we spent, it was about 10 days. It was almost 10 full days as the guests of the municipality of Bogota to see every aspect of the busway. And the whole purpose in my mind was to use this as a working trip to try to agree on whether we can actually do this in Jakarta. So, you know, I had a lot of time with Sutioso, and we saw a lot of stuff and had a lot of you know, I can't say he's the most, you know, he's not a great conversationalist, but he was all there. He was all there. And so finally, at the end of to cut to the chase, at the end of the 10 days, you know, I asked him, so sir, you know, if you're willing to do this busway in Jakarta, we will pay all of the technical assistance costs and get the world's best bus rapid transit people that include Bogota as well as Curitiba. We'll bring them to Jakarta and create the best possible design in the world. And so to cut to the chase, he agreed to that. So we put up about $2 million to fund this technical assistance, and he agreed to do the construction and purchase the buses. And so away we went, and you know, it actually started fairly soon after that trip. And you know, as I mentioned to one of you guys, I got in huge trouble from my ambassador because I don't know if you guys remember this, but Jalan Sudirman was blocked for about 6 months as they constructed that median busway lane. And it was in the newspapers every single day, you know, oh my God, it's so much, and what, you know, why is this, and what's the problem? And to make a long story short, you know, the ambassador found out that it was my project, and so he was really angry about all this and told me to kill the project. But I actually refused to do it because I thought, you know, any project that potentially helps millions of poor Jakartans over a 20-year lifetime, that reduces greenhouse gases, that's safer, cheaper, and reduces pollution, that's worth 6 months. And so we had a huge battle, and I refused to give in. And eventually what he told me was, as a compromise, he said, okay, nobody will ever know that this is a USAID or a US government funded project. I said, I will commit to that. So that's why our name was never a part of this, but we actually funded all of the technical assistance that created the busway. Unfortunately, the final footnote is that there was a lot of corruption. The specs of the buses were much better than the ones we got, and the design of the station was supposed to be much better than it turned out to be, but a lot of money was stolen in the bidding process. So you got cheaper buses and cheaper stations when you should have had a whole lot better. Anyway, somebody in Dishub went to jail for that. And I nearly got kicked out of the US government because I fought with the ambassador. But anyway, that's the story.
Working for goodness of the people is not a walk in the park, and it's not always a parade of hero, but you still did that anyway. Why? What's in it for you?
You know, Farhan, if I haven't told you, I think I've told probably most of the people who I've worked with, I love your country. I absolutely love your country. Every time I go back there, and I lived there for 8 years, I had 2 separate tours in the embassy there. I would give anything for your country. I can't say that about my own country. I think my own country is in a holy crappy mess right now. But that's another story. Indonesia is this incredibly fabulous gem on the face of this planet, and I love her people, and I would do anything to help the environment and the people of your country. That's it. That's it.
Okay, so your mother is a Mexican?
Yeah.
And your father is a Japanese?
Yeah.
You got to live as a minority in United States. Yep. And it constantly an issue everywhere in the world, being a minority. How did you survive? What gets you here to where you are right now?
How did I survive? Well, related to that point, let me just say that I have never been made to feel like a stranger or a foreigner or a weirdo in your country. I felt more at home in your country than in general in my country. I lived in DC. I was based there for about 5-6 years. People would come up to me and say, "Hey, do you speak English?" Yeah, I studied in college, so I speak some English. I mean, there's a lot of racism going on, not only against blacks, it's against Asians as well, and Latinos as well. And I'm 2 of the 3 of those. So, I mean, United States is a place that's maturing, and hopefully it's getting a little bit more educated and a little bit more sophisticated. I forgive it. But I got to say, this is one of the reasons why I love your country, because it's open. People are friendly. They're warm. They're welcoming. They're open-minded about who you are if you don't look like them. And I don't want to criticize the United States. We're going through a rough time here, but I will say that Indonesia is a fabulous place to live.
I'll say that your answer resonates to a lot of people here in our group of conversation as well, even though there are some different point of view or different stories, but basically the experience is quite the same. Thank you so much for sharing such an honest feeling about it, even though it's not always a happy ending story, because right now, after all you've done in South America, Central America, Indonesia, and everywhere, you are ended up in LA, not going anywhere. It's such a rewarding ending, right?
Well, part of my reward is I get to hang out with my mom, and there's one other part. Is I get to hang out with my pet dog also.
What's her name?
It's Coco. Coco, sorry.
Coco.
Coco is
anyway. So
Alfred.
I do have rewards really and benefits.
Alfred, in the chat, Judith is saying that you should have married an Indonesian. She apologizes. She's not on video, but she says in the message. What do you say to that?
Alfred should marry an Indonesian.
Judith, oh my God, Judith is such an awesome woman. Last time we were together in Jakarta, we had the most touching, heartfelt conversation. And if you're typing a message to her, tell him I sent her my love. She's a fabulous woman. I miss her.
Kath also said,
well
Okay,
prepared
sure.
Okay, Omar, back to you. If you have
Alright.
any more question,
Kang Farhan,
boleh, bentar.
may I?
Ini
Since
Omar
you
dulu,
are
Omar
very
dulu.
bromance, always have a good conversation anyway out of these seminars. You should let anyone give others chances. Hi, Omar.
Of course, we're gonna let everybody. Omar,
yes,
do you have any more questions?
Alfred.
No?
I
If
think
Omar doesn't have any more questions, then we can let everyone ask the question or comments.
Previous, what is it? A special time. I think gonna use my bahasa Indonesia because I'm sure pasti Alfred kangen sekali ngomong bahasa Indonesia kan?
Masih.
Apa? Fluently bicara bahasa Indonesia. Jadi
Boleh.
kenapa aku mau tanya? Karena Alfred kan orangnya kalau yang ini, oh Indonesia cantik sekali, oh kamu baik sekali. Tapi maksud Ayu, mungkin menyambung pertanyaannya Kang Farhan, apa sih sebetulnya, karena Alfred kan sudah berbagai macam pengalaman, berbagai tempat di dunia dikunjungi, berbagai macam peristiwa, tetapi apa yang membuat kamu merasa Indonesia tuh yang paling indah gitu? Yeah. Karena I have a doubt, maybe you say this to Indonesia, but maybe you say something else also to the other country. It depends on the crowd. Jadi sebetulnya
Ayu, don't be so insecure. Come on.
No.
I trust this guy.
No.
Maksudnya, kenapa sih betapa kamu jatuh cintanya sama Indonesia? Untuk itu pertanyaan pertama. Pertanyaan kedua. Dengan perjalanan karir Alfred yang sudah berbagai macam warna, berbagai macam isu, apa sih 3 hal yang kamu grateful sampai dengan detik ini?
3 hal yang saya sangat grateful. Okay. Well, ya, untuk menjawab pertanyaan pertama, dan maaf ya, sudah lama saya nggak pakai bahasa Indonesia, tapi saya akan coba. Negara Indonesia sangat istimewa. Tidak hanya karena the environment and its incredible richness, tapi orang Indonesia sangat spesial bagi saya. Maksudnya, ada campuran dari beberapa influences. Misalnya, orang Indonesia berdisiplin, bisa bekerja dengan keras, tertib. Tapi selain itu, orang Indonesia sangat ramah, sangat fleksibel, sangat terbuka. Jadi, those two types of qualities sangat susah ditemukan di suatu negara. Ya, misalnya saya setengah orang Jepang dan saya tinggal lama di Jepang. Mereka sangat tertib, sangat berdisiplin, sangat bekerja dengan keras, rajin, everything. But they're agak, I love Japan, but it's not so open. Sedikit kaku, sedikit terlalu. You're not as free out there. So Indonesia is a campuran yang sangat cantik of sifat-sifat manusia yang when integrated secara terpadu, it's this beautiful mixture. Does that help explain a little bit?
Yep.
Alfred, you haven't answered Judith's question.
Oh yeah, you're right. I was trying to avoid that. Well,
despite you saying everything is beautiful about it, but
Omar is very persistent.
I know.
I'm just joking, Alfred. You don't have to answer that. I'm just joking.
I have met the most fabulous men and women in Indonesia, and heaven knows that I've fallen in love. I was not capable of following through, and that's my bad, but I have met the most wonderful people, including some fabulous women there.
I have one question.
Yeah, of course.
What about my second question? Hasn't been answered yet by Alfred.
What was the second question? I thought
the three.
So 3 things that I'm most thankful for. Secara umum or tentang negara Indonesia?
From your career experiences, semuanya campur.
Yeah, I'm so grateful for the the ability to serve. My rank or whatever, my position, for me, those were just means to an end to serve. It sounds corny, but it's true. When you have the ability to serve, if you're a servant of people, that's the best damn job there is. I absolutely love that position, especially if you have resources, both human and financial, to use to serve people. And that was, for my job, I was most grateful for that. Another thing I was most grateful for was I got lucky, man. I met like you guys in ideas, and I'm not saying that just because I'm talking to you. You guys are incredibly wonderful people in your own right. You're all successful, but you're also, like I said about Orang Indonesia, you have this combination of being open and friendly and warm, but still, hardworking and disciplined and even goal oriented. And my best friends are like you guys. And what greater privilege can somebody have in their life than to be surrounded by such wonderful people? Again, sounds corny, but it's absolutely true. And I guess the third thing I'll throw in there is I've had the chance to see, I'm not terribly religious, but man, I don't know, the forces that created this unbelievable planet, from the coral reefs to the jungles, to the highlands, to the lowlands. Through my job, I've had the ability to see, I don't know how many countries, and working mainly in the environment, the world's most incredible ecosystems, both terrestrial as well as marine. And what that has done to me is just inspired me. Like, I will give my life for this. This is worth giving my life to, because I have never been more inspired than when I've seen these unbelievable places on the planet. And you just want to break down and cry, and then you grab a hold of yourself and say, my job is to serve so that we can keep this stuff going for next generation. So sorry for the long-winded answer, sorry for the corny answer, but that's my first stab at it.
Nothing corny at all, Alfred. It's very, very heartfelt.
Thanks, Alfred.
Well, we're close to closing this session. One question from Kath is, are you going to write a book, Alfred?
No, not planning on it. I would. Here's what I want to do, Kath, so thanks to the U.S. government, I have a pension. I retired, and so I'm free and working on whatever kind of projects, whether environmental or not, that help people on our planet. So instead of writing stuff, I still want to play a role, not in the U.S. government, and certainly not for salary. I just want to help people doing good things, and that's what I'm spending my time on now instead of writing. I think I'm probably a crappy writer, actually.
Then come back to Indonesia.
I would love. In fact, I was there, and then COVID happened, and then airports started shutting down. So I came back to be here in LA with my mom. But I actually, as soon as I retired, I did go back to Jakarta. Actually,
we wait for you to come back.
I'll be back. I'll be back.
Okay, the other question is actually from my mom. She asks questions all the time. Mom, are you there? Ibu Irit. She was going to ask you about Aceh. She's probably trying to find the mute button. There's my mom and dad, Alfred.
Hi, Ibu. Hi, Bapa. So nice to see you.
Hello.
Alfred, like you, I went to Aceh, accompanied by my husband, 10 days after
20 days.
The tsunami. And then, like you, it was a very difficult time to face such catastrophe.
Yeah.
But yeah, we have to be strong. The reason why I was there was to distribute $1 million from foundation to university students who were cut off from their schooling. My question to you is, when I returned 6 months later, I felt amazingly surprised at how people were resilient, and they're starting to remarry, starting to forget and move on. When did you return to Aceh after that 2 weeks or a week, maybe, your visit?
Yeah.
And, what do you think makes that day? And before I close, I want to thank you for loving Indonesia.
It's my honor, Ibu. Thank you for that question, and thank you for that comment. Yeah, it took me a long time to go back. In fact, I didn't go back for at least another year, and that was to work on the Aceh Malabo road, if I'm not mistaken, the U.S. government funded. But I did go back into the town, and you're absolutely right. The people were incredibly resilient, unbelievably resilient. I had the exact same impression. I thought, oh, wow, how people could have lost half of their family and their home and their life as they knew it, and they're back on their feet. Unbelievable. So, Ibu, I'm afraid I don't have a really good answer for that. I'm going to take a couple guesses. Number one is maybe their faith. Maybe their faith had a big part of that. Also, I think that the Achenese people, I believe, are pretty tough. I mean, they were the last holdout that the Dutch were able to conquer. Isn't that right? They were the ones.
You tell me about it. My father is from Aceh, and he's tough like a rock.
Bingo. So I think it has to do with those two qualities, and you know, I was in awe and total respect. You know, that was a totally new dimension on humanity. I have to say that in other countries like my own, even the smallest discomfort or inconvenience, and people are really dissatisfied and they riot, and you know, it's not good to compare. But actually, I can't help but compare sometimes. The largeness of the spirit, the toughness of the people, and their faith, which gave them the ability to be so resilient, extraordinary, unbelievable. I'm in awe.
Thank you.
And I think Lisa also has a very interesting stories when in Aceh. Lisa, would you care to share a short one?
Yep, we were there since the first day before everybody entered Aceh at the time. It was so devastating, and we're still working in Aceh until today. We have 3 schools that we operate until now, and I think we're still doing this. I don't know until when, because the school is supposed to be hand over to the government, local government in Biren, in PD, and in Lok Sumawe, but they can't. They are not ready to operate the school. So we're still there. We're still working with the local people, and we have been graduate lots of kids, and they become, you know, Pemda, they become orang pemerintah, they become, you know, they become a very good person now. So we still work on that.
Wow.
And yeah, it's so challenging, Alfred. We have so many things happen during this, how many years? 16 years,
16.
I think, in Aceh. 16 years. Yeah, it's not about not the challenge in financially, but it's challenge about the people of Aceh.
They're very tough, aren't they?
Yes, yes. And it was, but we love to serve. Like you, Alfred, when you say the ability to serve, I believe in that thing. It's the words that that as a human, we should be able to serve other human in our own capacity, whether it's big or it's small. I think that's it, Farhan. Yeah.
Thank you, Lisa.
Yeah.
Omar, do you have any more questions? Anyone else?
I have a question.
Oh, okay, Ima.
Go ahead, Omar.
Hi, Alfred, and I hope this will be a nice closing question. You know, you're far from your sunset. You say you're retired, but you know, I don't believe that. And you've worked in so many countries as
because your skin is still glowing, radiant. So
we're gonna have a skincare regimen session later on, Farhan. Farhan, we can have a skincare regimen session after this.
Yes, please.
Alfred, okay.
Africa
so my question is,
skincare.
yeah, my yes. My question is, look, I mean, again, you've seen, you love Indonesia, and you've seen a lot of the different facets of Indonesia. You've worked here, you know the people. If your last career is to be an advisor for the leaders of Indonesia, what would your message be? And then I actually know that in this discussion, there is a very young man who is part of this discussion. He's hidden behind his video. He is, and he's part of the young generation. There he is, Kemal. He's a high school student. He's a high school student, and again, he loves the environment. And so Melissa Luhur and I know him very well, know his mother very well as well. So I know, what can you advise the leaders of Indonesia on how to make sure that they survive all of this? And what is your advice to young Indonesians who want to work in that field? What do they need to know? What is one piece of advice that you would give them?
And these are both about the environment, is that right?
It's about anything, because I think the environment is not just about the environment, it's partly governance as well, right? So my field, of course, I'm going to be asking about that. But like, what would you, if you were a presidential advisor to Indonesia and you had the ears of the leadership of Indonesia, what would that advice be? And what would your advice to young people like Kemal be?
Wow. Okay. So,
sorry. Can you ask Kemal to introduce himself to Alfred later?
Yes.
I would love to meet Kemal.
And Kemal should tell Alfred what he's doing.
I would love to hear that. Should we do that first, or should I answer first?
I think you should know first, Alfred.
Kemal, introduce yourself and tell Alfred what you do.
Hi. Okay, I'm Kemal. I'm sorry for the background noise. There's a car. Like for the past 2 years, me and my friends have been working on our own environmental conservation foundation called the Sandekis Project. Check it out. And then, like, yeah, our goal is to help with the conservation of the Javan rhinos in Ujung Kulon National Park. But then our focus is more into like finding out the roots of the problem, because like most people associate like poaching, for example, with like the people who are hunting them. But we also see that the reasons for them to do these things are that because they're in a pretty tough financial situation. So it's more of a socio-economic issue that we're trying to deal with there. Yeah. So, yeah.
Good. Yeah.
Okay, so well, I have a couple of comments and in response to the questions that Ima posed. I'm just going to start with the overall statement that the youth of Indonesia is its most incredible resource. As I was talking about this really wonderful combination of ability to have discipline and hard work and study and have this flexibility, have this openness, that to me Indonesia is a prime candidate for being a technological leader in the future. The creativity and the innovativeness combined with this social spirit. You know, Indonesia, I saw a study that said Indonesia leads the world in terms of social movements and social commitments. Combine these all together, especially in a young guy like Kamal, who seems like a super intelligent and already committed guy. Wow, Indonesia's got this youth that is so high potential. I spent my last 2 years working as a diplomat in residence, so I've been working mainly with universities in California and Hawaii. So I see a lot of youth. And youth that has that combination, clearly, you know who they are. They're very, very special people. Indonesia has this in spades, in droves. There's so many, maybe they don't have college degrees, but they have the desire to help, and they have this intuitiveness and this innate creativity. And maybe that's why they use Facebook so much, and maybe that's why they're so web savvy. So in answer to your question, Ima, guys like Kamal, I don't know if he's still there, let's give that guy a scholarship. Let's give that guy the tools, the ability, and have him use his phone and use his innovativeness and creativity and technology and data to come up with solutions at scale and at a lower cost. Because, you know, the environmental problems now are so big, you can't go community by community anymore. We just don't have enough people. We don't have enough money, and the problems are too complicated. We need to use data. We need to use mobile technology. We need to have smart young guys like Kamal come up with ways to figure out problems that we just don't have the resources for in the environment. So this is the kind of thing that I would tell Jokowi, sir, because I think the world you're president, to me, seems like he's doing a great job. He talked about this revolusi mental before. I loved that idea. I don't know if it's still there, but educating, especially the young and inspired people, giving them the tools, the ability, is going to create an economic gain for the country. It's going to create social gain for the country. It's going to create a space for Indonesia among the leaders of the region, and I think potentially of the world, in these very, very important activities. You know, I've been kind of following what's happening with COVID, and I see so many community-based and individual volunteer efforts with sembakos all over the place, and free masks all over the place, and delivery trucks all over the place. Wow, combine that social kind of thinking with the tools and the education and the ability in guys like Kamal to solve problems, and you're going to have economic gain as well as a society that's solid, cohesive, and doesn't have the social problems like a lot of other countries, like I'm not going to say which one. So you got the huge potential there. Drive it home, man. Drive it home.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alfred. Okay, we're running short of time.
So
thank
Omar,
you for everyone.
Allow me to give a closing on this one.
Sure.
Again, I would like to thank Alfred for staying with us until midnight in LA. Thank you, Omar, for initiating this. Thank you, everyone, for joining. One thing I should say to Alfred is you should learn from Omar. He's been very adventurous. He's been working outside his own country for such a long time. And I think his achievement is equal to Alfred's achievement. But now Omar is exceeding you, Alfred, because unlike you, after staying for more than 15 years in Singapore, Omar finally married one Singaporean.
That is a perfect closing, Kang Farhan.
So Alfred, you should learn a lot from Omar. Back to you, Omar.
He's my teacher.
Okay. All right. Thanks for the closing, Farhan.
Yeah.
I do want to ask one question to Alfred. Alfred, we've seen your photos in 1984 and all that. Would you do your life differently? Would you choose a different career?
No, I feel super blessed and lucky and privileged with everything that's been thrown my way. I accept the goods and the bads. I've made a ton of mistakes, but everything has been done with the best of intentions. I feel very honest in saying that. And whatever the result is from what's been thrown at me and how I've reacted to it, I'm just thankful. I'm just thankful.
Inspirational, Alfred. Thanks. This is a great way to spend Sunday, and sweet dreams, Alfred. You're about to hit the sack soon. Thanks for staying up. And thanks for everybody for tuning in on the call.
Thank you.
Omar, Farhan, and Ima, and everybody else. I'm honored by this. Thank you so much for the ability to share some thoughts with you. And it's been a pleasure to have this exchange.
Thank you all.
Good. Thank you,
Thank
Farhan.
you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you, mate.